European Union unveils more measures to help Italy deal with the migrant crisis. Could a Cameroonian football hero solve the country's plastic waste problem? And a closer look at Madagascar's new video game sensation. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, the Mediterranean migration crisis continues to perplex European Union officials. Now, the European Commission is pledging another $116 million to Italy to help its government there manage the situation. The president of the Commission also informed Italy's Prime Minister that he was setting up a special contact team in Brussels to coordinate with Italian authorities. Migrants from Nigeria, Bangladesh and Guinea account for most of those fleeing to Italy on the way to Europe. A Spanish rescue group is credited with saving 167 migrants drifting in the Mediterranean on a small boat. 13 others, including a pregnant woman, did not survive. Another ship operated by the humanitarian group Save the Children rescued some 70 migrants Tuesday who were also attempting to cross the sea in a small boat. For the latest insight on the migration crisis, Joel Millman, a spokesman for the International Organization for Migration, joins me live via Skype from Geneva, Switzerland. Good evening, Joel.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Now, let's first start with this 116 million pledge. Do you feel that this is a significant amount that will make a difference?
Yes, of course. I mean, we think any help is significant. We're impressed with some of the speed with which some of the talks have proceeded. Everyone recognizes Italy's not alone. It's a frontline state of Europe, but it's the one that's the closest to the departure site in North Africa. So it's good to see that this is something that Europe recognizes and is eager to help.
And now we also saw this, the Tripoli government officials inviting Italian warships into its territorial waters to support the fight against the human trafficking. Do you make, what do you think of this move? Is it a smart invitation?
Well, warships and armaments we have never felt are the proper response to poor people trying to better their lives, and they're in the hands of really violent and reckless smugglers now. You hate to see more firepower, but we have to say at the same time the Coast Guard has done an extraordinary job in Libya, saving over 11,000 people already this year. So obviously other facilities, even if they're called warships, of course can be very helpful, but we want to stress that the battle is to save human life, not to engage in combat on the high seas.
And then there was this meeting Tuesday between Italian officials and humanitarian groups that operate migrant rescue ships in the Mediterranean. Now, the Italian officials are threatening to shut them out of the country's ports if they do not sign a code of conduct. Charities fear the 12-point document will limit their capacity to save lives. What are your thoughts on this?
Our thoughts are that anyone who's saving lives is someone we are happy to have part of the equation right now. We understand that NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are doing this kind of work have accounted for about a third of all those rescued on the seas, international waters this year. We're talking about a range of about 30,000 people. It's troubling to see people like this accused of being in cahoots with the smugglers or abetting or creating a pull factor. In fact, they're just people that are trying to recognize a need and are trying to pitch in, and they've done this now for several years. As I said earlier, they do about a third of the rescues, and obviously we don't like the idea that there's already been 2,300 plus drownings this year on that route. We think that to remove anyone who's committed to helping save human lives is probably short-sighted.
I mean, one of the things they say is that some of these rescue ships appear to be colluding in smuggling migrants because they communicate with smugglers. Is that a big problem?
I've never heard of communicating with smugglers being confirmed, and I'm not sure what appears to be colluding could possibly mean. They're obviously, the traffickers and the smugglers know that there are groups out there committed to rescuing, and that could maybe embolden them and make them more reckless. But if they have any illusion that this is getting them off the hook for the thousands that have been killed already this year and the tens of thousands over the last 4 years, I think that's mistaken. And I think that groups that save lives are acting for their own impulses. They are not colluding with smugglers.
Well, Joel, as always, thank you very much for your insight.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Joel Millman is the spokesperson for the International Organization for Migration. Now, suspected members of the Boko Haram terrorist group have struck again in northeast Nigeria. This time, insurgents kidnapped 10 members of a university research team prospecting for oil. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company says contractors working as consultants were seized near Jibe village in Borno State on Tuesday afternoon. The village is in Mugumeri, about 50 kilometers from the state capital, Maiduguri. Now, the petroleum company has been surveying for more than a year for what it says could be vast oil reserves in the Lake Chad Basin, a region wrecked by 8 years by an Islamic insurgency. The United Nations named 3 human rights experts on Wednesday to lead an international investigation into killings and other crimes in the Kasai region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a move that risks a showdown with the government. Congo has insisted that its own justice system is in charge of the inquiry, with the United Nations providing technical or logistical support. The announcement comes a day after the UN Joint Human Rights Office in Congo accused elements of the Congolese army of digging most of dozens of mass graves discovered in recent months in Kasai. More than 3,000 people have been killed and 1.4 million displaced in the violence, part of a wave of unrest that has worsened since President Joseph Kabila refused to step down when his mandate expired in December. A little further south, Zimbabwe's parliament on Tuesday changed the constitution to give back to President Robert Mugabe sole power to appoint the country's top 3 judges. The opposition immediately cried foul, saying the move could undermine the independence of the judiciary. Now, Zimbabwe voted for a new charter in 2013, which reduced the president's authority to name the chief justice, his deputy, and the judge president of the High Court. Under that provision, the Judicial Services Commission, a panel of mostly senior judges and lawyers, held interviews for each post. Mugabe would then pick final candidates from the names submitted by the commission. But on Tuesday, Mugabe's ruling ZANU-PF party used its 2/3 majority in parliament to ram through a bill to change the law, allowing Mugabe to solely appoint the senior judges. The amendment is the first change to the 2013 constitution. Now, for more on what the constitutional change means for the future of Zimbabwe, I'm joined by VOA Zimbabwe reporter Gibbs Dube. Gibbs, welcome to Africa 54.
Hi, Vincent. How are you?
I'm fine. Now, the question is, what was the rationale from the point of those who drafted this bill, behind that bill? What is the idea?
I think basically, Vincent, it's a question of people wanting power, As I see it, at the end of the day, the Judicial Service Commission was supposed to actually have a person, seconded to the president to say, okay, out of the 3 top names, you can select one person of your choice. And that person was Luke Malaba. That was done, right? But then in ZANU-PF, there's this friction that is there, in terms of who's going to succeed the president. We see that there's Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and then there is the First Lady, Grace Mugabe, who actually is said to be leading another faction. So now they are trying to give power to maybe one of those guys that is going to be capable of being a president, and then we end up appointing his own people. So this is a power struggle.
This is what is behind all this.
Yes.
Now, Innocent Ganese, who's the chief whip of the opposition, said that this move takes the country back to the days of a president who was more like an imperial president. Question is, has anything actually changed since 2013 when the amendments happened to the Constitution? Has Mugabe had any less power anyway?
In terms of the Constitution itself, on paper, the president loses a lot of power. But then there are certain laws that have not been aligned with the new Constitution. So many of them. And these laws actually still make the president to actually retain a lot of power. So in essence, with the amendment that is going to take place, which means that they are going to give the president more power to actually appoint a chief justice, the deputy chief justice, and the judge president of the High Court. Meaning that the judge president of the High Court previously was appointed by the Chief Justice.
Yes.
So which means now all the power is amassed around him, you know.
And our Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa has said that, and not only now, but has even previously said that there are enough provisions within the Constitution to check the powers of the president, so there's no need to whine too much. Question is, has this ever been tested in Zimbabwe since actually that new constitutional provision of 2013?
Not at all. What we're saying is the opposite, actually. So you can actually test the strength of the president in any way. But at the end of the day, that paper called the Constitution is not applying as we speak right now. The 2013 document is just simply a document. So at the end of the day, the power resides in the president.
Mm-hmm. But, well, the ZANU-PF very quickly has a majority in parliament.
Yes.
Does that tell us that ZANU-PF is more popular than the opposition anyway?
That's, by implication, yes, you can say that, because we cannot have any kind of these games that maybe they are rigging and all those kind of things in terms of elections. It does not give you the right to say elections are always rigged. Maybe ZANU-PF somehow manages to campaign and get the votes, but you know, at the end of the day, the opposition will always complain and say, no, 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 the elections were rigged. You know, sometimes they talk about Nikuv.
Yeah.
Still remember the Israeli company.
Yeah.
All those kind of things. So, but now they've got the majority, meaning that if they take this kind of amendment to the Senate, it's going to be a walkover, literally. So which means the power now is with him.
So that the underbelly of democracy can bring you the undesired results. Anyway, thank you very much, Gibbs, for joining us today and giving us those insights. Yes. Well, Gibbs Dube is a VOA Zimbabwe reporter. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. And check out our headline 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter, VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, a Cameroonian football legend tackles the plastic waste problem. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, plastic waste is an ever-growing problem in Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé. It's clogging up drains and rivers and causing flooding in the city whenever it rains. Cameroon's government has been trying to tackle the country's plastic pollution troubles for years, but with little success. Now, an initiative by retired Cameroonian football player Roger Milla is hoping to solve the problem by turning plastic waste into building materials through his organization, Heart of Africa, which helps abandoned children. Milla is also fighting pollution in addition to tackling youth unemployment. Heart of Africa employs over 300 youths in various Yaoundé neighborhoods to regularly collect plastic from garbage cans, gutters and streams, which is then later used to make plastic slabs.
When it rains, the river floods and the plastic bottles come all the way to our houses. They also cause us to get sick, and they also emit a foul smell. We cannot sit in our compounds because of the polluted air. We only breathe in bad air.
My foundation, which deals with the environment, came here to help clear all this waste and clear the river of plastic waste which has been affecting the local population and also allows water to flow as it should.
Well, Milla is famous for being football's oldest goal scorer at 42 in World Cup history. Well, back to the U.S. New sanctions punishing Russia for its interference in last year's presidential election cleared a key step Tuesday as the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill expanding congressional checks on President Donald Trump's ability to ease those penalties. VOA's Katherine Gibson reports from Capitol Hill.
Russia, Iran, and North Korea receiving a strong message from the U.S. Congress.
These three regimes in different parts of the world are threatening vital U.S. interests, and they are destabilizing their neighbors.
And while the bill would impose tough economic and diplomatic penalties, it also sends a message to President Trump. New congressional oversight powers a needed check, said the top Democrat on House Foreign Affairs.
If President Trump wants to play golf or do something with his crony, Mr. Putin, he can count the Congress out because we're going to punish Mr. Putin.
Amid congressional investigations into alleged links between the Trump campaign and Russia, an unusually bipartisan move by lawmakers to limit executive powers to lift sanctions.
This is a significant restraint on President Trump because no president wants to lose the leverage of being able to take off sanctions.
A restraint the White House initially lobbied against before coming out in support of the sanctions earlier this week.
The administration is supportive of being tough on Russia, particularly in putting these sanctions in place.
The cost of congressional oversight, the possible loss of U.S. diplomatic flexibility, says a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine.
Sanctions, once they're embedded in law, may actually prove less successful in eliciting a change in Russian behavior than when they're based on executive orders.
A loss that sets up a tough choice for President Trump.
A veto would come at a price. First of all, it would be seen as one more piece suggesting that, in fact, something improper was worked out between the Trump campaign and the Russians back during the election in 2016. And second, there's a strong likelihood that that veto would be overridden.
And with just days to go until August recess, lawmakers are racing to finish that legislation to secure the president's signature. Katherine Gibson, VOA News, Capitol Hill.
The United States and Britain are launching preliminary talks in Washington on a trade deal that will set up a new trade relationship between the two countries after Britain's exit from the European Union. Britain hopes removing barriers at its current EU arrangements will boost trade with America by $40 billion by the year 2030. VOA's Luis Ramirez has more of the details.
Britain is poised to secure a place at the front of the line on trade negotiations with the United States, just more than a year after then-President Barack Obama warned the British about the future trade relationship if they voted to leave the European Union. British Prime Minister Theresa May's government hopes that Brexit and U.S. President Donald Trump's America First policy can avoid the pitfalls of protectionism.
It's very important that we keep the United States orientated towards an open, free trading approach because it is the world's biggest economy and what happens there will affect everybody else. So I think that directing the debate away from some of the protectionist noises into a free market, rules-based debate is a very important discussion for us to have.
The talks are only preliminary. Britain has no authority to enter trade agreements until it is completely out of the European Union, and that is 2 years away. But laying down the groundwork early is important politically, as the popularity of May's leftist rival Jeremy Corbyn grows, and so do concerns that a U.S. trade deal may mean opening up Britain's national health care system to U.S. firms.
I'm not sure that the British government is actually going to have the whole public opinion behind it in striking a trade deal with the United States. It could get very, very controversial.
For the British, agriculture is a major sticking point. There are big differences between U.S. and British farming methods when it comes to the use of antibiotics and genetically modified crops, neither of which are welcome on British store shelves. In the important financial services sector, ties are already strong, and some believe a direct U.S. deal could mean more growth, says venture capitalist Rob Misselbrook via Skype.
When you're dealing with the EU, you're dealing with the trade agreement. All these different pressure points come in from Italian winemakers to French cheesemakers to German auto. And so any pure, for want of a better word, or direct agreement with the US can sometimes be hostage to elements like that. Dealing on a direct basis, it's us and them. We speak the same language in many ways.
President Trump says he wants to move very quickly on a trade deal with Britain. The British went to Washington confident Trump and the U.S. Congress are on their side. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, London.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, Madagascar releases its first homegrown racing game. We'll be right back.
Just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In South Sudan, Amnesty International says sexual violence by all sides of South Sudan's civil war has become widespread. In Senegal, security forces halt protest called by former President Abdoulaye Wade by blocking roads and firing tear gas at his supporters. In Cameroon, retired football player Roger Milla helps the government tackle the growing problem of plastic waste, employing over 300 youths in Yaoundé neighborhoods. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. It looks like a performance straight from a Bollywood film. But this is Amisha Bhardwaj getting ready for her wedding day, a video that has caused a sensation on the internet. Some of the attention is for her decision to team up the blouse from her traditional Indian wedding outfit with a pair of shorts. Her cheerful attitude, sunglasses and white shorts coupled with the traditional blouse and bangles were the subject of major discussions across social media platforms. Now, the video has garnered more than 8 million views since it was first published in May 2017. Next up, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has welcomed a rescued dog to his official residence, delivering on a campaign promise to boost awareness of the fast-growing numbers of abandoned animals accompanying a surge in pet ownership. Tori, a 4-year-old black mixed breed, becomes the first shelter dog to attain the title of first dog. Like many shelter animals, Tori suffered the double stigma of being abandoned and having darker fur in a country that favors lighter-colored animals as pets. Pet ownership has grown rapidly in South Korea, with nearly a quarter of all homes having one, but the trend has also boosted the flock of abandoned animals in shelters nationwide. Well, and finally, the international games market is dominated by Japan, China, and the US. But now Madagascar is taking baby steps into the world of virtual play. At a recent gaming expo, the Gazkar racing game impressed players with its free-to-download app. It took their team of 10 designers, coders, and developers almost 2 years to build Gazkar. High internet costs and frequent power cuts have slowed the growth of gaming companies in Africa, a continent with approximately 650 million mobile phone users, representing a major potential market for homegrown games. And that is what is trending today. Now, origami, the ancient Japanese art of paper folding, can create cranes whose wings flap and frogs that jump. Engineers are taking the same idea and applying it to robotics. VOA's Deborah Block explains.
This triangular origami robot is just 6 millimeters thick and weighs only 26 grams. Like triangular Lego blocks, engineers can snap together modules to create robots with all kinds of geometric shapes. Their flexibility means they can lay flat to slide into small places and then pop up into a multi-sided pyramid shape to accomplish all kinds of tasks. Researchers at EPFL, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, are working on the new prototype.
You want them to communicate with each other so that they can create different workforce tasks under a remote environments where normal robots or larger robots or more expensive robots have difficulty to get into.
The modules can be folded into an endless variety of shapes.
They are made of multiple layers of flat sheet material, and we fold them together. We fold it to obtain the 3D shape of the robot. And then we introduce other components, like electronic components for sensing and communication, as well as battery for powering on board.
The robots are inexpensive, easy to manufacture, and can be mass-produced.
You should not cry over a lost robot or a broken one on the way. So we want this to be a cheap, easy solution for transferring information. And in order to do that, you need these robots to also have multiple modes of locomotion. So current status of these robots can crawl, hop, and even jump to go over different types of obstacles.
Researchers say the versatile system will broaden its use in fields such as human-robot interaction. Deborah Block, VOA News, Washington.
Well, that's our show for today, and I'll be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate.
Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot